Welcome to the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach. Join me as we explore the dynamic intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. From the challenges to the triumphs, we're here to unravel it all. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical wisdom, and a whole lot of inspiration. Let's embark on this empowering journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach, and today I'm joined by Ife Thomas. Hello, Ife, and welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, you're most welcome. So, just for the benefit of the audience, if you'd like to introduce yourself and what you do, please.
So my name's Ife Thomas. I'm a mindset and confidence coach and a motivational speaker. But I've kind of moved into a phase of helping people with their keynotes. So I'm a storyteller and I teach other people how to share their stories in an impactful way and build a commercial keynote.
Oh, thank you. And you're a mum as well, just to add on to all the stuff you do?
Yeah, I know. I've been a mum now for 13 years. So I'm a mum of two boys, one who's 13 currently and one who is 12. So there's 17 months between them.
Oh, wow. So a busy household then, you'd say.
You could say that.
How do you manage? How do you balance it all?
I think that's a great question, and it's probably one of the most common questions I get asked in every phase of my life. How do I balance being a mother, running a business? So I don't really believe in balance. I believe in blend. It's about blending. So my life, my work, my family, it's all one thing. It's not separated. And any opportunity to blend and really create like harmony between me, my husband, my children, their lives, my life, the work life. I'm always looking for those. I'm always looking to create a blend because I don't think balance actually works. There's a great line from Shonda Rhimes. She says that in her TED talk, The Year of Yes, she says that if I'm succeeding in one area of my life, then I'm probably failing miserably in another. And I really like that because it's very difficult to have it all at once. And if we try to be the best mum that we can be and be the best leader that we can be, there comes a time when you have to be at a place to support your team at exactly the same time when you might have to be in the audience at your child's school play. So whichever one you choose, that space that you're not in loses, let's say. But if you think about it in that way, then you're never, ever able to serve everyone. But if you think about it as it's a blend and I'll make decisions, every day I make a decision to help me create more of a blend. So when people ask me, how do you do this? I always say my thought process is every time I have a decision to make, I ask myself, what do I want to do in this moment? Who do I want to be in this moment? And then make decisions moment by moment rather than being rigid or regimented in my approach to every situation. So I'm a much more fluid decision maker, which ties into why I believe in blend and harmony. So that's a long answer, but it's complicated because who I am every day is different depending on the situation and how I want to be in that moment. So I can't actually pre-design my response or my behavior. I just have to trust. I just have to trust that the decisions that I'm making will work out and unfold. And if they don't work out, then I'll make another decision.
Yeah. No, so it's almost like, yeah, you can have it all, but not at the same time, pretty much, because it's not going to work. Like you said, you're trying to be in different paths or making different decisions for various things going on around you at the time. So, what got you to start your journey in storytelling?
So how did I even start my storytelling journey? So that's such a great question because it's a bit like if you think about our lives as a timeline, there's so many different things that happen in our timeline that pull us to where we are that we might not have known about. So Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them when you look backwards. So whenever you're trying to understand where you started from, there's never really a definitive place, there's only the one that you recognize. When you ask me that question now,
Yeah.
today, it'll be different to when you ask me it in a year's time. But right now, today, I would say that my storytelling journey started when I was about 8 years old. From 8 years old is when I can really remember watching myself. That's the earliest memory of watching myself. So there's Eckhart Tolle. He talks about the observer effect, about if you want peace and harmony, then you have to be able to disconnect from your emotions and observe yourself and then respond in alignment with who you want to be. And this is something that I think is a great practice that I live by. I'm always looking at myself from outside of myself. I'm observing my behavior. And now I know the reason I observe my behavior is because I'm autistic. So being an autistic child, I felt very confused a lot of the time because of the chaos of the world and trying to understand people and trying to understand my own responses and how to communicate effectively. And as a child, I had a definite desire to want to feel connected. So as a way for me to organize my thoughts and the way I communicate and try to feel like I could understand my world, I would spend a lot of time reflecting and reliving situations and reviewing situations. So without knowing, I was already building the observer behavior as a young child, just watching people and trying to connect it all. But then as I grew up, the more I understood people and had observed people meant that I could then get involved into the storyline. I could be part of the narrative. I could be part of the conversation because I could see where I could fit.
Yeah.
So that was just human connection and communication. But as I developed and grew, and at 30 found out I was autistic and then started to understand myself even more, I'd realized I developed this ability to read people, to understand people, to watch people, to look at the nuances and communication. And I became very obsessed with communication, how people communicate, why people move that way, why people react that way. So I spent a lot of time watching people behave and then trying to understand them. So that's why I studied human behavior and psychology, and I wanted to understand why people do what they do, why they say what they do, just so I can make sense of it. And all of these skills that I learned means that I can create a narrative and I can understand where people are coming from and tell the stories that they're not saying. Because most people don't share what they're thinking. They only show it with how they're reacting and their behavior. And storytelling for me is when you help the listener or the viewer or the audience member come in to feel and to be part of the story. And the only way you can be part of the story if you understand the nuances. And the nuances are not normally ever shared. So as a storyteller, I share the things that nobody says and show people how people are feeling through words. So I think it all started as my deficit. I became a storyteller because I didn't understand the world and didn't understand the narratives. And I so badly wanted to. So from 8 years old is, I would say, when I first became a storyteller without even knowing.
So that's fairly a young age, though. Did you find it quite difficult? Obviously, I'm not sure when you got informed or notified that you were autistic and how you kind of took that. Did you get the right support? I don't know if I'm getting my question right. Did you get the right support and did you understand what was happening?
So when I found out I was autistic, did I get the right support?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get the right support. Because the thing is as an autistic female and being a Black female and being a creative, I've kind of lived on the fringes anyway. So they never do any real tests or controlled groups or understand people like me. They're not really looking at females. They're not looking at Black females. They're definitely not looking at creative females. And many of the people that I reached out to didn't understand me anyway. So they can't support something they don't understand because they don't know enough about my actual lived experiences and all of the things that have helped me to become who I am. So when I found out I was autistic, it really was a great thing for me because it made sense to me. I understood why I was very hyper-focused, obsessed, analytical, routine-driven, emotional, all of the things that could be looked at as negatives. You know, I would hold on to things, I would relive things, I would overthink things, I would be very organized in my way of doing things to the point where it could be controlling, obsessive, all of that stuff, intense, difficult to work, like all of those things that come with the personality traits and the things that I needed to set in place to help me function were not really celebrated. So when I found out I was autistic, it made sense to me. It gave me this feeling of, oh, relief. Oh, good. Like there's nothing wrong with me. Like this is how I'm coping. These are all coping mechanisms. And my therapist said to me, she said, well, there's not really much I can help you with because you've built up all your own coping strategies. You're doing really well. You're succeeding very well. At this time, I was running a business, had 6 members of staff, 2 shareholders, 2 children, living in a beautiful, house, and I was winning at life. So for there, they were like, well, you seem to have figured it out, you're not really somebody. But what had happened is what I actually needed was other coping strategies. I needed to have other ways of dealing with it because most people measure success in a specific way, but success to a lot of people is what you see on the outside. It's the output. But success for me as an autistic person is, can I lower my heart rate? Can I go into a space and not want to have to run away? Can I have deep conversations without getting burning sensation in my body? Can I feel at a less lower vibration? Can I eradicate some of the traumatizing memories? Can I, like all these things that you don't see, which I wanted to be better at, they didn't even know was even a thing that I was going through because you're excited by the shiny surface things. So to answer your question, no, I didn't get support, and I looked from about 17 before I even knew I was autistic. I was searching for someone to help me because I knew I needed someone to make sense of what I was going through. And every time I met a specialist, therapist, psychologist, anyone, they misdiagnosed me every time. So I was brought up by white parents. So when I was 6 weeks old, I was fostered by a white family who raised me, loved me, and who I call mum and dad. And every time I'd go to therapists, they would be focused on that, like the early childhood. They would be thinking that my challenges were because I was in a white family and I was Black and my parents had disappeared. Like they were so focused on that they actually missed the thing that I was like needing them to understand was that I'm autistic, but they couldn't understand it. So I feel like the system very much did not support me. And if I would have had the right support earlier on, it would have saved a lot of difficult, uncomfortable situations that I had to go through to get to where I am now. So yeah, I find that when I work with a lot of psychotherapists and psychologists, even over the last 20 years, I'm teaching them, like, so they understand, because unless you're autistic, you don't actually really understand. You can study it all you want, but you can't understand. And you can't understand, and even if you are autistic, you can't understand everybody's autism because everyone is different. So I met one woman called, her name is Deirdre Nick Citrick. She's from Autism Champions. And she's the first person I ever met who I was like, oh my gosh, you get it. Like she honestly could get it. And that to me was like 2020. I was like, oh, like that gave me hope to meet somebody who understood me. That was amazing. And that made a big difference. And then in 2021, I found another therapist who really understood me. So this woman had, like, it was like a dream. Like imagine a psychotherapist who is a Black female raising a Black autistic son, because I'm a mother of an autistic son too, so, who's already 20, so she's way ahead in her parenting, which is amazing. Her husband is a pastor, so she's a woman of faith, and she studies neurodiversity. Like, what are the chances? I think there's one person I could find who ticked every box. So she was like, became my person. She lived in Atlanta. So I worked with her for 3 years, and it just was a game changer for me. So yeah, that I was lucky enough to find someone who could really take the time to work with me every week. So yeah, I think there's a lot of women out there who are on their own in silence, and every time they reach out, there's not anyone who can actually help them anyway.
And that's something I hear quite a lot, not just, from the perspective of autism, it's just pretty much everything in general, because just because somebody's studied something for so long, they don't always know the answer, and sometimes they don't always understand. And I hear that from, so many people saying a similar thing, because sometimes you almost have to, if you leave that experience, you understand some of the traits which are not in a textbook, if you like. So it can be quite challenging and so difficult. But how did you kind of overcome, because you've obviously worked with a few people, how did you overcome sort of the stereotype or any labels really that came with this for yourself?
What labels do you mean? What? Tell me a little bit more about, so I can answer the
So
question.
with when you with regards to being autistic, did you find that you were treated in a slightly different way because people didn't understand you, and how did you overcome those barriers and those things?
Oh, wow. Well, I think being autistic, first of all, there's a couple of layers to it. So disclosing that you're autistic
Mm.
comes with its own set of responses from the general public. Most people say that there's three major things. I'll tell somebody I'm autistic, and they'll go, the first question they'll say, you don't look autistic. That'll be the first thing they'll say. And then I'd say, but I am. And then they'll say, are you sure? And I was, yeah. And then they'll say, oh, well, we're all on the spectrum somewhere. And that's basically the three responses. So each
Mm.
response is like, I call it PTSD of identity. So, but first of all, I've told you I'm autistic, which is quite a brave thing to do. And then your response is you tell me that I don't look like I'm autistic. So
Mm.
I don't understand the point of you saying that. Like, what's the relevance? And obviously, they're processing it out loud without thinking about how they're actually triggering the person who's just openly disclosed. And then what they do is they then say, well, are you sure? So now they're questioning something that you spent your whole life wrestling with, if to check that you actually might have misunderstood and you might have
Yeah.
made a mistake. And then you're like, well, yeah, I'm sure. And now you have to start defending yourself. And as you're just about to defend yourself and say, look, well, I went through this, they then say out of the blue, which is like, well, we're all on the spectrum somewhere. No, we're not actually. You're not on the spectrum, because if you were, you would never say something so rude. And by telling me that I'm on the spectrum, are you saying it to make me feel better, or you feel better, or to help you understand how
Mm.
someone like me, who doesn't align to what you think autism looks like? So it's like the whole thing is like the other person going through um, their own processing wheel to figure out how they can make sense, when what they could
Mm.
just say is tell me more. Like, and it's just like, so that is quite traumatizing.
Yeah.
And it happens so much. So yeah, that would be the first thing. And it still happens to today. So and it happens to my sons as well. My son says, people say, oh, I never would have thought you were autistic. Why? Like, well, because you're really smart, and like you're in all the top sets at school, you're like super super smart. Yeah. And like, or well, you give good eye contact, you can't be autistic. Like these just um random beliefs that the
Yeah.
general public have about autism, which makes it very difficult for an autistic person to actually disclose, because you're now having to deal with all their conscious bias, their belief systems, their the stigma. So yeah, we're not there yet, but I do believe we will get to a world where people know to just say, thank you for sharing that with me, tell me more, or how does that
Yeah.
affect your life? Like just a few little, which builds connections. And the people that do say that, you build me as an autistic person, I build a stronger bond with them immediately, because I think, oh, they're a safe person to be with, because
Mm.
they're not thinking of their agenda and their like, I suppose, their ulterior motives of trying to understand why you're autistic, because it's only to make sense in their mind. It's not really thinking about you. So it's quite, you have to be really, you have to have done the work to
Yeah.
come out, because that's what it
Yeah.
is. You're coming out, and you're having to come out to different people and different responses. So it hasn't been particularly pleasant. But what I found is if I have a privilege in the sense that I run my own business, I hire myself, I make my own money. So I know that a lot of autistic people feel very uncomfortable coming out to their, putting it on their medical files or telling their employers, because they could then start having preconceived ideas of what they think they can and can't do, you know. And when you tell people what a vulnerability, which it is a vulnerability, people who don't understand it can actually, you, that they can weaponize it, can
Mm.
weaponize how they respond with it. They can use it against you.
Yeah.
um so it's a very difficult place to be, and you have to find the right people, the right company, and be able to be ready to walk people through, because you
Yeah.
have to then base it. It's a bit like Black Lives Matter, when you talk about racism, and then you have to educate like a white person on how some of the challenges that you've been through being a person of color. It's the same thing with autism. You have to educate them, the neurotypical people. And a lot of the time I meet Black people who I have to educate about autism, because they're, you know, I find that there's this real, for me, I'm constantly in this space where if you're in a group and you're advocating for that group, then a lot of the time you only care about your group, but you don't care about the other groups. So it's like there's all these groups of people, you know, Black Lives Matter, neurodiversity, transgender, LGBTQ, all of these things. But the groups are actually quite insular and don't care too much about the other groups, which is like the most interesting thing for me, especially when I look at
Mm.
Black people and autistic people. I find that some Black people are the absolute worst people to understand autism. And I'm just like, I'm a Black person who's living my life and I'm autistic. Like,
Yeah.
how can you not be willing to hear what it's like to have an Black autistic experience? Because that experience is just as challenging, if not more challenging, than just being a Black person. So it's like you're dealing
Mm.
with all these segmented groups, and being a female, you know, and being a creative, and
Yeah.
being a mother. It's like
Yeah.
you've got so many. So how do I deal with it? Is that I, first of all, the one thing I do is I connect to my faith. You know, I'm a Christian, and I have a very important connection with my faith. And I think that gives me the strength to show up with that, where in any group. In any group, I'll always show up with my faith, and then I will figure it out from that point.
Mm. So it's quite you know, a lot of things you've mentioned on there, but I think there's a lot of instances of assumptions. You know, people just assume rather than understand. And just because somebody looks a certain way, we can't just go around assuming that, you know, one, for instance, the thing that you get a lot about people saying, oh, you don't look autistic. Is there a look about it? This is another question you then start thinking. So do you have to look like a specific, you know, person or not?
Exactly. Do you have to look like a specific person?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And
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 that,
it's almost like a lot of it's like mindset work, isn't it? It's you have to really work on the mindset and shift all that kind of stuff. Is that something you've had to do yourself?
yeah, and to work on my mindset and to help other people work on their mindset.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, and also, you know, everyone has their own lived experiences. So for me, well, because I have two sons with autism, and one of them was only recently diagnosed a couple of years ago, where my firstborn was diagnosed when he was 2. So there's also like within the autism community. So my son has a set of his challenges, and my other son has a set of his challenges, and both of their challenges are different. And then there's lots of other children who have other challenges. So when I talk about my children and what they've achieved, some autistic parents who've got autistic children who have different needs will disregard what they would compare and say, well, my child is much more severe than your child, and or that's okay for you because your child can talk, or your child can walk, or you're like, so within the communities you're
Mm.
dealing with lots of micro segmentations within the challenges that autism. Some people who are autistic can go out and get a job and integrate into community. Others are unable to access or get a job. Or some of them are able to have a job but have to have it remotely because they have a specific skill set and they couldn't engage and do food shopping or other, like, so there's all different differences. And within the community, there's this idea that each person's autism is at a different level. And that perpetuates the fact that we're all on the spectrum because it's not a linear straight line, it's a circular. So everyone is dealing with different things. And one of the things that I always look at is when you look at autism as a mother raising a child with autism, the first thing I wanted to look at is what are the professionals saying? So I went to the National Autistic Society and it said that a person with autism is 9 times out of 10 likely to have depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. So 1 in 4 for the general population, but for autistic people, it's 9 out of 10, which I think means that my son has a very high chance of having depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts. And I knew this when he was 2. So from then on, my thought process is why? Why are the statistics so high against him? What do I need to look at? How can I support him? So then I became very, very focused on making sure that he has high self-esteem so that he likes himself, loves himself, believes in himself, and to create a world where he can see how great he is. So I completely focused all of my energy on making sure that he believed in himself. And now he's 13, high levels of confidence, high levels of self-esteem, knows who he is, knows what his goals are, is brilliant at animation and numbers, and he is thriving because we created a world where he could see how great he is and focused on the things that he does very, very well and ignore the rest. So that is how we thrived with this son. But my other son, who easily went to mainstream school, was able to adapt, communicate, actually top all the top sets, super, super able academically, no idea. He is at more risk being autistic because he's a super masker. So my first son had an educational healthcare plan. He has a one-to-one support person at school. He has everything supported for him. He moves it in a way that you can visibly see that he tiptoes and flaps and spins and grinds his teeth and puts his hands over his ears as a child. He does all the visual things that you can see represents autism. My other son doesn't show any of that, has no idea. Where if you look at the two, who was I more 2 years ago before my youngest son got diagnosed? Who am I more afraid of having suicidal thoughts? The one that doesn't look, let's say, autistic.
Yeah.
They're the ones. So when you look at the stats of children who are taking their own lives, they're not actually the children who are the ones that have got the TAs and the support and have got all of the things in place. It's the ones that are masking, who look like neurotypical people and who are masking and suppressing. They're the ones. So we need to really make sure that when we look at autism, it's not like, oh, they're severe, they're high functioning. No. Like, who are the ones who are more at risk of self-harming or taking their own lives or reducing themselves from the world? Well, just go to Oxford and Cambridge University and ask them for their list of children that have burnt out and gone home and now can't access the world. They're usually autistic boys who have gone all the way through school, top performers, no one knows, firing all on cylinders, get to university and burn out. We realise they've got autism, realise that they were undiagnosed, realise that they now can't access education and they go home and live with their parents until they're in their 30s. And then that's it. So there's a whole host of young people who are going through education who are probably the top performers that nobody can ever believe could be autistic, because for some reason people think autistic people are stupid, like not able to be smart.
It's been absolutely incredible, and thank you so much for sharing everything that you have shared today and just enlightening. I think the audience will really listen with intent and actually pick something and learn something from all the things we spoke about. Is there any sort of last words of advice or anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on this wonderful podcast. It's been fun. Just getting to just speak freely, unedited. which is nice because normally when I'm doing things, I have to really think about the narrative and the story and the message. But I just said anything that came into my mind, which is wonderful for me to unorganized way. So thank you. And you made me feel very safe here. I think the thing I would want people to listen to and to leave with is to sit down and, really think about what is your assignment? What are you here to do? And I heard Priscilla Shearer, she said this, and it always makes me think now, makes me want to cry. She said that, we've all got an assignment, and it doesn't matter if we're 20 or 30, we might think we're young, but if we're only here till we're 40, then we're pretty old. Or you might think, oh, I'm old because I'm 50, but you're here till we're 100, so you're pretty young. The point is none of us know when we're going. So when you're going through your life and you're going through your journey, always check in and say, what's my assignment? What was I put here to do? Like for me as a Christian, I'm like, what's God's plan for me? And am I actually honoring? Because when it comes to the end and I turn up at those big gates and God looks at me and says to me, I put in you so much for you to do, and you didn't even do any of your assignment. You were busy doing all these other things. That would be quite hard to face for me, maybe not for others, but you have to just sit with yourself and say, what is my assignment and what am I here to do? And every day work towards it in some way and know that you are here for a reason. And I think if you live your life with that level of confidence, like I'm here for a reason, and if something's happening to me, it's either to help me, teach me, or prepare me. I think everything in life is a lesson. It's either a lesson that's going to prepare me for something that's coming, or it's to teach me something so I can move forward towards the assignment.